Shalom, everybody. Hello. I am personally looking forward to getting back to some kind of routine after Sukkot. Right now, it feels like we're going in and out of holidays, non-stop. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shabbat in between, Sukkot. Um, and in the middle of it all, I was sick, almost back to 100%. Thank you, those who wrote to me or thought of me. Uh, and in the meantime, my wife and kids caught it, so a lot of fun, right? I'm sure you know this cycle of getting sick, of illness yourselves. And honestly, for me, this course is a weekly bright spot, a time when I can share with you about Gush Emunim, Religious Zionism, Tzionut Datit, and most of all, read your thoughtful comments, reflections, engage with issues that are not only part of the past, but are deeply rooted in the present and deeply relevant to our present reality. Now, how are you doing? Where were you on Yom Kippur? How did you experience the day, if at all? Obviously, every person experiences it in a different way. Um, another thing is that even when I teach online, it's usually through Zoom, right? So there's room for real-time questions. Our special format here, where I record myself and you watch in your own time, challenges the sense of direct and live interaction between us, and that's okay. It has its advantages. And as I said, I very much enjoy teaching as well as reading the discussions. But at the same time, I would really appreciate feedback. If you are enjoying the lessons, please let me know if you have requests for me to highlight a specific aspect or topic, or if you feel something is missing, please share as well. Of course, I cannot promise to accommodate every request, but I will do my best. Um, okay, now, surprisingly, and now I want us to start talking about the Jewish underground, המחתרת היהודית. Not much has been written. Yes, there were some important works that were written, but not much, not as maybe one would assume. Um, and I think this is also something we can ask ourselves, why not? Why not? And I have some answers, and you may have other answers, and that's also something that is interesting to discuss. But not much has been written about the Jewish underground. To this day, one of the most important sources is a book written by Chagai Segal. You can see here in Hebrew. The problem, of course, is that Chagai Segal himself was a member of the underground. He wrote a book, Achim Yekarim, Korot HaMachteret HaYehudit. Um, so he wrote about the Jewish underground, and it certainly gives him a lot of insider information, but it's not a critical and academic book. And it's always, the tension between having an insider, having someone who experienced it himself, or let's say someone that was part of Gush Emunim, and they can definitely um, share with us some very valuable, very insightful um, um, details and understanding of what happened, but there are also some things that are missing. Sometimes when someone is too close, is part of something, he or she are lacking the outside perspective that helps us see things in a different perspective, more critically. Sometimes people believe they know everything around them, and they don't, in fact, because they're part of a certain subgroup in Gush Emunim, and they're not aware of other subgroups. And sometimes the academic scholar does know more um, because of the research, because of things that are done by others. So there's always this tension um, between the two types of sources. So we do have, pardon me, Chagai Segal. Another book I brought here is of Nomi Gal'o, המחתרת היהודית terrorism שלנו, the Jewish underground, our terrorism, Jewish terrorism. I also recommend an excellent film that was made by Shai Gal, and you can also see it here on the slide, and I definitely recommend. Now, I would like to draw your attention to a rather sharp critique by Yair Sheleg against Gidon Aran. So last time we did speak about Gidon Aran and about his book. I provided you with an AI-generated translation of his article of Yair Sheleg. By the way, very similar critique of Yair Sheleg, also Moti Inbari shared. Also in Hebrew. Um, and I want you to notice that some of Sheleg's critique also came up in our own class discussion. By contrast, Tomer Persico praised Gidon Aran's work very highly, and also a link to his interview is included in today's Moodle. And you're welcome to run the text to a translation tool yourselves. If you have any problem, I'm happy to do that for you. In addition, Tomer Persico conducted an interview with Gidon Aran, who, as you may recall, lived Gidon Aran for several years among the members of Merkaz Harav during the formative years of Gush Emunim. In my view, the interview is excellent, very engaging. Even if you do not agree with all Aran's conclusions, I strongly recommend reading it. The interview is also in Hebrew. Um, and and again, if you have any problem with translating it, please let me know. And the link to Tomer's Persico's interview with Aran is also attached in today's lesson materials. And I myself wrote to Gidon Aran, and I will meet with him in person later this month. If any of you have any questions you want me to share with Gidon Aran, I'm happy to do it. We're gonna meet in a Tel Aviv cafe, probably 2 3 weeks from now, and obviously I will update you before and after. And one other thing also that I think maybe Naama, I'm not sure, raised this in the discussion is that among Gush Emunim, they were subgroups. And I wanted to agree with that and share just another example for another article here in Hebrew of Navit Yehoshua, Yossi Goldstein, and Miriam Bilig. An article also attached in today's class about Gush Emunim not being this one movement with one ideology, but rather different streams. They claim that they argue that there were three main streams that led the movement. America's Harav stream, headed by Benny Katzover, Kibbutz Hadati stream, headed by Gershom Shafat, and a Bnei Akiva stream, led by Israel Harel. Again, I don't necessarily agree with everything. You do not necessarily have to agree with everything, but I think it's worth reading. I think it's a very interesting article. and now about today. So today we will have two videos. This first video that will be more historical. What was the Jewish underground? What exactly happened? Who were its main activists? Here you have the leader, Menachem Livni. You can see here on the slide. Where are some of them today? What punishments did they receive from the court? And some discussion of the criticism that the sentences were relatively light. The second video will focus on two ideological aspects. One, the influence of Shabtai ben Dov on Yehuda Etzion. Yehuda Etzion, one of the Jewish underground members. He was part of the group that um, wanted to destroy the Temple Mount Mosque, Haram al-Sharif. And he lived and lives until today in Ofra, the settlement of Ofra. And he was influenced by Shabtai ben Dov. I did attach a thesis, an MA thesis written by Yotam Halperin. He says, it's also in Hebrew, that he does not think Shabtai ben Dov played an essential role in Yehuda Etzion's thought. I disagree. I think it's interesting to read Yotam Halperin's perspective. I respectfully disagree, and I will say that most scholars that I know of do believe that Shabtai ben Dov had an important role in Yehuda Etzion's part in planning to destruct the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, Kippat HaSela, right? He planned to blow up the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount. And we will read a short excerpt from Ben Dov and consider. Sorry again. To what extent he influenced Yehuda Etzion. And a second thing we will discuss in the second video is opposition within Gush Emunim. While most opponents objected to the underground's actions for reasons of statism, mamlachtiyut, meaning they believed such acts, right? Acts of terror should be carried. So what makes it terrorism? The fact that it wasn't carried out, sorry, by the State of Israel and the IDF. So these acts should not be a private individual initiative, right? They have their own initiatives. Now, there was one figure who expressed a moral opposition. He argued that the underground's actions were immoral because they harmed Arabs and because they were involved with murder, with human lives being taken. And that person was Rabbi Menachem Fruman. Now we will study together one is a formative text opposing the Jewish underground. And it's a good opportunity to share with you that my book about Rabbi Menachem Fruman, and you can see it here, will be published in Israeli bookstores in Yediot Press in about 3 weeks from today. So it will be distributed to most bookstores in Israel. So you can expect any of you who are in Israel to see the book. And I hope whoever reads it enjoys it. If you want to write to me in person, I can share with you also the text of the book. But you please, without sharing it without sharing it to others, just for you. Okay, now April 1948. April 1948, members of the Jewish underground were caught while attaching explosives to buses, 5 buses carrying Palestinian workers. In total, the Shin Bet arrested 26 suspects, with 2 more arrested later, a total of 29 members of the Jewish underground Hamachteret HaYehudit. April 1984. What did I say before? 48? I don't know. 84, obviously, yes. 1984. 1984. Another date. Please memorize this, okay? Maybe the last session, maybe we can have a live Zoom. I can test you guys. When was Rav Tzvi? When did Rav Tzvi pass away? When was Mizmor Yutet Lemdinat Israel? When was the Jewish underground? When did they operate? What years? And when were they exposed? April 1984 is a very, very important date for you to remember. Now, most members were part of or closely connected to the Gush Emunim movement. Not all, but most, yes. Many belong to the social and religious elite. Unlike phenomena that we know from our nowadays, like price tag, tag mechir. So price tag activists, right? Jewish terrorism, fundamentalism, today, price tag activists are they do not come, they're younger, and they aren't from the elite. They aren't from the elite. It's very different. And these people were family people, respected figures, and thus their operations were long-term and sophisticated. Now, Judge Finkelstein described the defendants as follows. Now, I'm quoting the Judge Finkelstein's words. This group of people whose sentences we are about to determine is unique. Most, if not all, are both yeshiva graduates and academically educated. Most served in the IDF, took part in Israel's wars. Among them are army officers who were wounded in service, even heroes of Israel's wars. Most are men of Torah and labor who left behind a comfortable way of life and with their families went to establish a Jewish settlement to cultivate it and to guard it. End of quote. Now, the underground was not a monolithic group. It consisted of smaller cells, sometimes unaware of each other's operations. There were 3 main cells. We will get to this. Now, what were the main attacks of the Jewish underground? The first one is June 2nd, 1980. Car bombs targeted Bassam Shaka, the mayor of Nablus. Bassam Shaka, the mayor of Shechem, Nablus, and Karim Khalaf, the mayor of Ramallah, and Ibrahim Tawil, mayor of Al-Bir. So we have Nablus, Ramallah, and Al-Bir mayors. Shaka lost both legs, Khalaf lost part of his foot, and Tawil's car bomb blinded a police officer, a policeman, Suleiman Harbawi, who came to the scene, and the attacks were revenge for the May 1980 Hebron ambush near Beit Hadassah, in which 6 Jews were killed and 16 injured. So it was only a month later, okay, a month later, a month after this attack, right? We have May 1980, and then we have June 1980, a revenge. Now, the 3 mayors were leaders of the Palestinian National Guidance Committee and were accused by the underground of inciting violence against Jews and therefore were chosen as targets of these car bombs. 2nd October 1982. Hand grenades were placed weren't placed. Hand grenades were were um, were activated, were thrown, right, and activated in a Hebron school soccer field, injuring several children. And July 1983, armed masked men attacked the Islamic College in Hebron, killing 3 college students, and injuring 33. This was framed as revenge for the murder of Aharon Gross, a yeshiva student from Hebron 30 days earlier. Again, a month later, revenge. So we have 1980, 1982, 1983. Nobody is caught yet. Nobody knows officially, right? Nobody knows. Who are these people? Nobody even knows if these events of Jewish terrorism are connected. Now we have the Temple Mount plot. Some members plan to blow up the Dome of the Rock. Gidon Aran argues that the Temple Mount was the group's earliest focus. Very interesting. When only 16 members existed, right? Later we reached 29 members of the Jewish underground. At first there were only 16 members, and the focus was, according to Gidon Aran, the Temple Mount. Later, shifting also to anti-Palestinian attacks. There were disagreements amongst these Temple Mount members. Yehuda Etzion pushed for prioritizing the Temple Mount, while Yeshua ben Shushan is somebody you really need to learn about and read about. And please, I'm curious, who did any of you ever hear of Yeshua ben Shushan before today? If yes, and if no, I would love to know. Please write to me. Please tell me about this. Now, there will be a book coming out by Gidon Aran on Yeshua ben Shushan very soon. And I was very fortunate to review, not review, but to read the book and to also share with Gidon Aran some of my comments. Um, um, and it's the first book ever written on Yeshua ben Shushan. He was a Kabbalist, a mystic, very, very interesting figure, not a Merkaz Harav person, but he had a lot of influence on them. Now, the plan involved, the Temple Mount plan involved Uzi rifles with silencers to kill Palestinian guards. Etzion and Ben Shushan were the key figures, but there were others that were part of this group. Their vision was both political, to prevent the Sinai withdrawal, even though this started even before. This is another whole topic. And theological, to initiate redemption, to expedite the coming of Mashiach. Now, they believed detonating the dome would force God's hand to rebuild the temple. It was meant to occur just days before the evacuation of Sinai settlement in 1982. Notably, these activists were not disciples of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. Their main ideological influence came from Shabtai Ben Dov, to be discussed later. Okay, now the last event is the one that we opened with, the April 27, 1984. 5 bombs were discovered attached to buses scheduled to explode at 4:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon, while the buses are fully populated um, with these Palestinian workers um, returning home. Okay, here you can see one of the journalist reports, עשרות אנשים נעצרו ביישובי יהודה ושומרון והגולן, right? We have dozens of people arrested in Judea and Samaria and the Golan Heights settlements, and see what the subtitle here says, that amongst them we have a relative of Rabbi Levinger. You can see Rav Levinger here in the photo. A few of Gush Emunim elders, and it says that it was exposed um, following these explosive, the bombs that were attached to the buses. And I want to read to you several descriptions from the verdict. So you can notice this, I want you to notice these different voices between different activists, their attempt to protect one another after being caught, and the way they explained events to the police. So here's one example, and I'm reading, obviously, it's translated right from Hebrew. So in the confession of Chagai Segal, stated that a few days after the murder of Beit Hadassah, remember, Yehuda Etzion approached Chagai Segal, and said that there was an intention to respond by attacking the mayors of Judea and Samaria, who were also members of the National Guidance Committee. Yehuda suggested, Yehuda meaning Yehuda Etzion, that he take part, and he agreed. Later, under Yehuda's instructions, he participated in 3 surveillance operations at the homes of Ibrahim Tawil, mayor of El Bira, and Karim Khalaf, mayor of Ramallah. A few days before the operation, he was told the date, the vehicle, and who would be with him. In the car with him were Yitzhak Novik. Okay, Yitzhak Novik, another member of Ofra. By the way, both children of Hagai Segal. Hagai Segal himself become a prominent journalist, and his son is Amit Segal, and the son of Yitzhak Novik is Akiva Novik, both in Israeli media. Obviously, the fact that their fathers were involved does not imply, does not mean anything. We should not conclude anything regarding to them themselves. As we know, parents and their children do not always hold the same worldviews. It's just interesting to mention, right? Now, so in the car with him were Yitzhak Novik and another person who was responsible for placing the explosives. And this other person, Chagai Segal, refuses to expose who is this person, his identity. That man brought the device to the car. They set out in Novik's vehicle, first to Khalaf's house. After attaching the device to Khalaf's car, they moved on to Tawil's house. Segal served as a guard there. The booby trap was not placed on his car, but at the garage door. The explosive was meant to detonate when the garage door was lifted. During the reconstruction, Segal led investigators to the sites. He explained that they tied a strong, transparent wire to the garage door handle with a device placed on the side behind a stone wall. Segal repeatedly emphasized that the device was intended to injure, not to kill. Okay, that is what he is arguing. In here in front of you, by the way, you can see some of the Machteret members in the court um, of the prison and you can see some police officers. You can see them walking with some Torah books. Okay. The bomb at the Wheels garage exploded while a border police, Suleiman Harbawi, approached it, seriously wounding him and leaving him blind. It's a real tragedy. He was totally forgotten, Suleiman Harbawi. Very little was written about him. Had a very tragic life. He lost his vision in both eyes. He was left blind. I mean, this is really heartbreaking. A terrible outcome of this terror. And the device attached to Kalaf's car exploded, injuring him and causing the um, amputation of his legs. Now, here's another passage. Yitzhak Novik said that his partners in the attack on the mayors were Hagai Segal and another man. So he as well is not giving details about this other man, about the third person. We don't know who is this third person until today, right? They arrived at the car. He arrived at his car with a black nylon bag, which he understood contained the explosions. So he understood it contained the explosions. He himself did not see the cars, nor did he see who did what. He did not know who assembled the devices in his car were himself and the man who carried out the placement of the explosives, whose name he refused to reveal. He dropped them off and they went on foot to attach the devices. Now, what happened in court? By December 1990, the last activist of the Jewish underground was released. From their arrest in 1984 until late 1990, only about 7 years, had passed before all were freed. Here you can see in this slide, Yehuda Etzion is in the center. Left, holding his fist is Yeshua ben Shushan, the Kabbalist. And on the right, you can see Dan Be'eri, convert. Has a very interesting story. I think he was French, I think Catholic convert. I will need to look into it again. I have the details. I think he came to Israel. He was a student at Hebrew U. He became familiar with Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. Late 60s, became part of the Merkaz Arav Yeshiva, and until today, he's a quite well-known figure in religious Zionism. Dan Be'eri. Yeshua ben Shushan passed away, but Dan Be'eri and Yehuda Etzion live to this day. Their time in prison was described in Yediot Achronot newspaper as a picnic. They were placed in a special wing in Tel Mond Youth Prison, chose their own cellmates, had a synagogue, study books, and a lively social life. The leaders, Menachem Livni, Shaul Nir, and Uzi Sharbaf, convicted of the Islamic College murders, had their sentences commuted 3 times by the President of Israel, from 24 years to 15, then to 10 And finally, they served about 6.5 years. So the leaders that served the most time in prison were Livni, Shaul Nir, and Uzi Sharbaf, and it was only 6.5 to 7 years. Um, Here you can see Chagai Segal on the right, and Menachem Livni that had a winery, a boutique. Right today, he runs a boutique winery, and Menachem Livni was the leader of the underground, convicted of murder. Uzi Sharbaf and Shaul Nir, as I said, were also leaders sentenced to life imprisonment but released early. Yehuda Etzion planned the Dome of the Rock attack, sentenced to 10 years but served 7. Later became an educator, Yehuda Etzion. Ze'ev Chaver, also known as Zambish, became a secretary general of Amana, a senior Yesha council leader. And released, he became CEO of the Jewish Quarter Development Company, replacing Livni. That was what Livni used to do. Other members, I'm not telling you all of the names, but yes, some well-known people. Natan Natanzon became an advisor to Education Minister Naftali Bennett. He served 3 years. Hagai Segal, you can see here from Ufra, served 3 years. He became a deputy editor of Nekuda, the settlement journal, and he wrote the book, Dear Brothers, Achim Ekarim, about the underground, and became editor-in-chief of Makor Rishon, a leading right-wing journalist. Yeshua ben Shushan, I mentioned before. You saw his photo, an intellectual engaged in Kabbalah, not a disciple of Rav Kook. Built a model of the Temple Mount Mosque at his home for demolition, planning, sentenced for 7 years, served 4.5. Dan Be'eri convicted. He served 3 years. By the way, here you can see one of the journalist reportings have the names, um, the accusations, and the years served in prison. Okay, so those of you who can read Hebrew, again, you don't necessarily have to understand this. I'm just telling you what you see here, the names, and and where they come from. So you see who comes from Jerusalem, who comes from the Golan Heights, places like Nov, Keshet, Ramat Magshimim, who comes from Judea and Samaria, Ofra, Shiloh, who comes from Ale Adumim, southern Har Hebron, Judea, yeah, Beit Chagai, Susia, Kiryat Arba. Um, um, and we have Dan Beri, we have Gilad Peli, Avinoam Katrieli, Yosef Tzruya, Yehuda Cohen. Both, by the way, Tzruya and Cohen were unusual. They were not settlers. They seemed repentant, pursued academic studies after release. So again, it's not a monolithic group. Noam Inon, Moshe Zar, Yitzhak Novik was that we've read earlier his testimony. Barak Nir, Uri Meir, Ben Zion Henman, the Henman family. I think there were 3 or 4 of them. Ben Zion, he was the oldest member of the underground. He was about 50, came from Nov, involved in Dome of the Rock and Mayor attack. Released after 2 years, returning to his beekeeping in Nov. His nickname is the Tzaddik of Nov. His brother Yaakov Henman, Air Force pilot. Boaz Henman, the son of Ben Zion Henman, involved in both Dome of the Rock and bus bomb plots. And alongside their trial and imprisonment, a public campaign for their release began. The campaign was led by Rabbi Yehuda Chazani, another quite anonymous figure that is very had a lot of influence in Gush Emunim and was just behind the scenes. but someone that is very powerful. There were 300,000 Israeli citizens signed a petition demanding their release. A poll by Mina Tzemach, very well known, showed that over 70% of Jewish Israelis supported their release. Again, they were seen as legitimate, the Arab mayors were seen as legitimate targets. Um, Part of the reason was that the Palestinian mayors, as I said, so they were perceived as terrorists themselves. Haggai Segal wrote in his book that most Israelis did not particularly regret the maiming of the mayors of Ramallah and Nablus. We will now watch a critical video about the broad public support for the Jewish underground. Here you can see one example of a demonstration in Jerusalem calling on the release of the מחתרת, הפגנה גדולה בירושלים היום, חנינה למחתרת, מצעד מחאה בשעה 5 מבית העם ברחוב בצלאל, ויצעד ברחובות ירושלים עד רחבת הפגנה, הפגנה גדולה. This comes from הוועד למען שחרור אסירי המחתרת. There's even details for donation. And this is done with they got a permit from the police. Mitzad, the demonstration and the protests in Jerusalem, Ishur Bagatz, the court and the police. And here now we're going to see this video that again is critical about this broad public support. It's in Hebrew, and there are unfortunately only Hebrew subtitles. For those of you who do not understand Hebrew, I want you to listen to the tone. And what they're saying here, they're imitating the newsman that is reporting the Machteret, the underground, the Jewish underground. And every time he is saying something negative, he's saying it in a way in a way that you can understand the opposite, right? יש פה היפוך מסוים, right? He's saying that they're accused of serious crimes, so he's saying serious crimes and shocking attempts. Okay, so please listen to the change of tone every time there's this description of how horrible were the deeds, the actions of the Jewish underground, and this is a critique of how the story was covered in Israel's mainstream media. Okay, so let's give this a listen. Again, you'll hear the word of psha'im hamurim, ניסיון מזעזע, מותם הטרגי, המעשים הנוראיים, זעזוע עמוק, המחרידים, okay, deep shock, horrific. We will do all in our power and act against them with the full severity of the law, okay? And you can and okay, so let's give this a listen.
ערב טוב ושלום רב. היום נפתח בירושלים משפטם של 29 חברי המחתרת היהודית, אשר נאשמים בשורה של פשעים חמורים כלפי האוכלוסייה הפלסטינית, ובהם ניסיון מזעזע להטמנת חומר נפץ ב5 אוטובוסים ותקרית ירי בה נגרם מותם הטרגי של 3 סטודנטים פלסטינים במכללה המוסלמית בחברון. אנו עוברים לכתבנו בשטח יוני חרמץ.
ערב טוב חיים. כאן בבית המשפט המחוזי בירושלים חשפה הבוקר התביעה את שורת המעשים החמורים שביצעה המחתרת היהודית, ובראשם כמובן פעולת הטרור שהובילה בין השאר לקטיעת רגליהם של 3 ראשי ערים פלסטינים. כאן לצידי נמצא התובע בפרשה. ערב טוב לך, עורך דין פנחס פומרנץ.
ערב טוב לך יוני, ערב טוב לכם באולפן.
ערב טוב מר פומרנץ, וערב טוב שוב לכתבנו יוני חרמץ.
ערב טוב חיים, ערב טוב מר פומרנץ.
ערב טוב לך יוני, ערב טוב לך חיים.
ערב טוב מר פומרנץ, וערב טוב לכתבנו יוני חרמץ.
ערב טוב חיים, מר פומרנץ.
ערב טוב גם לך מהאולפן יוני.
It's almost
וערב טוב
festive.
שוב לעורך הדין פנחס פומרנץ.
ערב טוב לך חיים,
Good
ערב
evening.
טוב לך יוני.
ערב טוב לך מר פומרנץ וערב טוב לך חיים. מר פומרנץ, כיצד היית מתאר את שורת המעשים
Almost celebrate.
הנוראיים שביצעו הנאשמים?
ראשית הייתי רוצה להביע זעזוע עמוק מהמעשים המחרידים ומהכוונה לפוצץ את כיפת הסלע. כמו כן, אני הייתי רוצה להבטיח שנעשה ככל שביכולתנו ונפעל מולם במלוא חומרת הדין או משהו כזה.
בהחלט מילים חדות ומדויקות. אנחנו מחזירים את השידור לאולפן. תודה רבה לך חיים.
תודה רבה לך יוני, ותודה רבה גם לך מר פומרנץ. ואנו עוברים לנושא הבא, תקליט חדש לזמר המוערך
Okay.
זוהר ארגוב.
Okay, so just to make clear, this is not actually was not actually the news, right? This is Israeli comedians that are acting as a video of critique. Okay, so who opposed the underground immediately? So we have mainly rabbis Yaakov Ariel and Yoel Bin-Nun. Again, please remember the name Yoel Bin-Nun. And the argument was that only the state had the authority to carry out acts of war. There were also criticism that the underground was trying to force the end of days, right? להקיץ, לזרז את הקץ, לדחוק את הקץ, to force the end of days, and that they acted without approval of rabbinic authorities such as Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook. But in terms of moral opposition, we have Rabbi Menachem Fruman, that he took a clear stand against the underground. He was a member of Gush Emunim Council. He was part of Gush Emunim. And he took a clear stand against the underground, focusing on the immorality of harming Arabs. We will expand on this in the next video. So we'll see you soon. להתראות בינתיים.